Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Top of the morning to you. Thank you for starting your day with us on Morning Spring on Western Spring Television, reaching you live on channel 190 on the DTT platform of Star Times. Femi Olanikwekun is my name. It's a lovely Tuesday morning here. I do pray that you have the springs to make you succeed today.
Thank you very much for joining us. It's a beautiful morning here as well. I am Temitope Ajijola Oluwaola. It's good to have you join us on the program today.
Well, so it's the 7th day in the month of February. It's the second month of the year, and it's 17 days to the general elections. I should have Emmanuel with the countdown today. You know, if you want to be here, Emmanuel will do the countdown for us. But I won't do the other countdown. I know only about the election. It's 25th. I don't know about what's happening on the 14th.
That's the most important one.
That's the most important, really. So it's 17 days to the general elections. All opportunities to collect your PVCs. I mean, that's over now. But then keep your PVCs jealously. Be ready to be part of the process. Be ready to vote. On election day. It's a moment defining time for us, really, and it's important that we are part of this process. You have, as lawyers call it, the locus standi to criticize government or demand for a better one if you are part of the process.
Yes, and the decisions we make on that day would inform how we are ruled for the next 4 to 8 years.
Sure. So, I mean, the next 4 years, it's going to be momentous, you know, interesting times in the country, and it's important that you speak through your votes. Please be ready. Please be prepared. Do not be discouraged. Do not be dampened in your morale. Resolve in your heart of heart to be part of the process. Well, we have many things lined up for you again this morning. Of course, we'll start with the newspapers shortly. But then also we'll be looking at some legal developments in the polity. The Supreme Court gave a ruling yesterday that was shocking. A lot of reaction trailing it. And over the Naira crisis as well, we had, you know, 3 states up north also suing the federal government. We'll be getting to talk to our lawyers today to help us have a better understanding of some of these legal issues, and we'll have a deeper understanding of the issues. But that'll be after this break. We'll go on a break now. When we return, we'll bring you the newspapers.
Just stay with us.
All right, so let's begin with the Punch newspapers. And the banner headline is about the new Naira. I mean, it's not going anywhere anytime soon until this crisis is resolved. So the banner headline on the Punch newspaper, new Naira, governors, parties begin legal battle over CBN deadline, you know. And it's on pages 2 and 28 of the Punch. That's when you can get a full story. But it has a number of riders. El Rufai, Matawale, Yahaya Bello, Su FG demand extension. Court backs parties, stops CBN, Buhari from shifting deadline. EFCC nabs Abuja bank manager hoarding 29 million naira new notes. Talk about interesting.
Very interesting.
Interesting issues, yeah. Interesting.
Well, it's also interesting that at the beginning of this Naira swap, the CBN governor was adamant on shifting the non-extension, and eventually he did, probably due to pressure from the National Assembly,
and other stakeholders,
yes. And so he eventually did, and if we're still asking for deadlines, well, I think it's just, they feel like, okay, it should be like the INEC deadline. You know, INEC extended, I think, twice for the people, and now we still want another deadline. I don't think it's feasible right now for us to have another deadline. What with all the issues tied to that, all the economic and advantages that the CBN governor has laid out, and other analysts as well. But I don't think that we should have another extension. I mean, the people have been grappling with that. It's it's important. But I also heard someone say yesterday that if we want any notable change, we should be ready to put up with some hardship as well.
Well, so I mean, so the question will be: is this hardship the right one? Is this hardship the kind of
Or
hardship?
is it being gone about the right way?
Yeah, you know, that we should go through. And as it stands now, we seem to be divided down the middle as a country. There are those who believe that the deadline should be extended. There are those who are saying no, the deadline should not be extended. So you can see that from the suit by Kaduna, Zamfara, and Kogi states suing the federal government.
Yes.
They are demanding for an extension, but you have some parties, you know, about 16 parties, 16 or 15 parties of the 18 registered parties also going to court. And incidentally, the court gave them what they wanted. They are asking the CBN and President Buhari not to extend the deadline. So we have two opposing camps here.
We can also see here, we can note that this governors who are actually asking for this extension, this one's mentioned here specifically, they're from the same party.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm still wondering what their own agitation is. What is the motive for this?
Well, so if you check what their suit was about yesterday, when it came to the fore, it was that they are concerned about the impact of these on the residents. And you also recall that last Friday, the governors of the APC also went to meet President Buhari, ask him to extend. Incidentally, the PDP seems to be on the other side. So is the, the more you look, the less you see in Nigeria. So the opposition PDP is in support of the CBN and the president. The president's party himself, the APC, is against this particular policy. That's because there are insinuations that this is meant to fight vote buying, and this is part of a strategy to deal with the APC presidential candidate. But I mean, whether that's the case or not, it's just some 17 days away from the election.
And then it's also interesting that last Friday there that the EFCC has nabbed a bank manager holding 29 million naira in notes. I mean, I remember that at the inception of this naira swap crisis, the CBN governor said there are notes in circulation. But then it wasn't obvious at the time that people were holding it. So now it's obvious. I mean, some banks were also busted, some days ago.
Yeah, last week.
And now a bank manager has hoarded 29 million naira.
29 million
To what purpose? To what end? When we have clients of that bank, you have customers of that bank rather, fighting at the gates, pushing back and forth to get, the money. Also keeping vigils as well. So it's really a very dicey situation.
Well, I mean, so we expect the bank manager to be singing at the cannery in EFCC detention. Let him sing. Let's know why he's doing what he did. What he did, and we need more of such interventions. But ultimately, I mean, the larger picture is that the CBN has mismanaged this policy. We can put some blame on bank managers, a few of them holding the naira, but then this is beyond them. I've spoken to some of them who are friends who said, guy, look, we get, for instance, our ATMs, 8 million naira before. Someone particularly said, every Friday we'll put 8 million naira in our ATM. But then look at it now, we are just 300,000 naira. 8 million naira to serve people over the weekend. Now they are left just 300,000 naira. And this has now got into a stage where you have customers assaulting, threatening bank officials and bank staff in Ibadan. You had a situation where infuriated the citizens attacked the bank, destroyed the bank. And so these are unintended consequences of that policy, of the mismanagement of that policy. So the CBN needs to look in that direction so that these helpless bank officials will not bear the brunt of a mismanaged policy. But that's not, about the banner headline. Let's check some other parts of the paper just beside the nameplate. Lawan's Supreme Court victory, daylight robbery, Machina camp. That's the man who lost to Senate President. Many people are still confused about that judgment. We sure will hear from our lawyers this morning on Morning Spring. And just above the nameplate, will hunt down 16 Nigerian killers in Burkina Faso. That's from President Buhari. Some Nigerians who are on a pilgrimage to Senegal, were killed supposedly by Burkinabe soldiers in Burkina Faso. They were transiting through Burkina Faso to go to Senegal. It's an Islamic sect. So they were trying to see the leader of the religious sect in Senegal, something like a pilgrimage. But unfortunately, 60 Nigerians were killed. So the president is demanding for answers and it's saying we are going to hunt down Nigerians. But it sounds somehow to me because tens of people also die in Nigeria. We've not been able to get answers. But it's good that we're also demanding answers. Maybe we'll get answers from a foreign land, other than our own. But just beside that story, court stops Lagos International Airport concession. Otom shuns Atiku campaign. Ayu slams governor. Otom shuns Atiku campaign. Ayu slams governor. The PDP battle royale is still not over. This time it has shifted to Benue State. Ayu and Otom are from the same state. Ayu is the national chairman. Otom is the governor. Otom wants Ayu out. Okay, just below the paper, the picture on the front page of the Punch is gory and it's sad, it's terrible. It's about the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. World mourns as earthquake kills over 2,700 in Turkey, Syria. I saw some images yesterday. It's heart-rending. It's shattering. Almost 3,000, and the numbers stay
what the
rising.
Families of these people, that's those who even know that their own members are there trapped. Imagine what they'll be going through right now, and imagine how many people would still be rescued from this, dead or alive.
Officials said that this earthquake was felt across much of the Middle East, from Syria to Turkey, where it's had large impact. It was felt in Lebanon. It was felt in Israel. You could see how widespread the magnitude, and I think it was calculated 7.5, something like that. It's huge, and it destroyed large areas, and you can see from the number of people dead, there are thousands, tens of thousands of others who are injured. We just hope that these people find comfort and indeed our own hearts and prayers with Syria and Turkey. Turkey has appealed for international help already. We do hope that the international community responds in like manner and attend to them over that. It's really sad. You can get more on that story on page 26 of the Punch newspaper. And quickly we'll run through the Punch. Thugs disrupt Rivers APC rally, destroys vehicles. That's on page 27. This violence in Rivers, attacking opposition party rallies is shameful. Something need to be done about it.
It is. It's really very shameful. It is also saddening as well that we still resort to violence every time we are enraged, every time we feel disappointed about a thing or two, every time we feel that we have been trampled upon. It doesn't always have to resort to violence, and people should please desist from resorting to violence every time.
All right, so page 4 of the Punch. Mara arraigned for burning wife, brother-in-law to death. That's terrible.
Very
and
terrible.
613 billion to cook loans spent on roads, bridges. That's according to the federal government. That's said about the Punch newspaper this morning.
All right, moving on quickly to the Nation newspaper. We still have the banner headline saying governors ask Supreme Court to hold CBN's Naira swap deadline. And the writers, Kaduna, Kogi, Zamfara states sue federal government. 4 political parties get High Court injunction to block extension. EFCC arrests bank official with 29 million Naira new notes. Like we said, we're going to get more of this, more of the insight to the Supreme Court and Supreme Court's injunction and all of that, and all other very important issues on the day list this morning. And just below that, 3,500 killed in Turkey, Syria earthquake. I think this is a more updated
so imagine from the Punch, 2,700, 3,005. I think Daily Trust is reporting 3,000. So evidently it's more than what, the death toll is still rising.
And it may still rise from this number.
It's horrendous. This is terrible. This is
Yes,
terrible.
the president has mourned with other world leaders, and we're also mourning with them. And we pray that they have, the comfort, just like you said, in this period. All right, we can see a picture of a campaign, and just below it, Katsina, Buhari seeks 2 million votes for Tinubu. Terrorists will be defeated, says APC candidates. That's on page 29, where we see the president now, openly, campaigning for Tinubu. I think this is what they've been clamoring for.
Well, so I mean, there's been some explanation to that also. I remember I heard Adam Oshiomhole on Sunday speaking on national television and saying, well, all this noise about Tinubu not campaigning is just a figment of the imagination of those who are saying it, saying there is a schedule that for those of them who are in the quarters of the party managing the campaign, that each time the president will not be available, he's always communicated to them. And that's, for instance, when he was not available for the one inquiry, was in Senegal for an African Union program. There was another time it was in Mauritius or Mauritania. So they said there is nothing untoward about him being absent from the campaigns, because governance has to go on as well. And so that's why he also asked that the VP, Yemi Osinbajo, step aside over that very one. So they've tried to provide some justification for the president's absence. So they're saying there's no big deal whether he attends or not. The
president is not always there.
Yeah, yeah.
Of course, well, that's a logical one anyway. It can always be on the campaign train. All right, just below that, the bottom strip says Machina loses Yobe APC senatorial ticket to Lawan, and 391,145 PVCs uncollected in Osun. We have about, like I said, 391,145 PVCs not collected. And despite the extension, I still wonder why we have such number of people. Well, it might be those that, like the rec was saying, there might be those who have relocated, or those who have done another, have had another one. So that might be the case. So it may not really tell on the outcome of the polls.
Yeah, unfortunately, these people will not be able to collect those PVCs again because the time has now passed.
Yes.
So, talk about what I said the other time about those who've collected. And the REC was on a program on radio yesterday, and they talked about the fact that the number actually reduced from when it came in late last year, that about over 100,000 other persons actually collected their PVCs, which is to some extent impressive.
Yes, it is quite impressive. All right, just below the nameplate, Emefiele's Naira redesign, dance and general election. That's an analysis of Emefiele's policy and the general election in view. And above the nameplate, trial of Ekweremadu, wife, child, doctor begins. The more of that story is on page 6. Emefiele is going to be tried with his wife, child, and the doctor. We're still looking forward to what the outcome of that
the
is.
travails of a parent, I mean, it is what it is. It's so unfortunate anyway. But it seems that the UK government is insisting that something untoward was done, that due process was not followed. The picking up of that child, or of the guy that was to donate, his own organ, they didn't follow due process. That the money paid him was paid illegally. Those are questions that the court will be asking, and answers. They will be asking for answers to know if Ekweremadu is guilty or not.
Well, let's see what the outcome will be, and prayers with the family of the Ekweremadus. All right, why NLC opted for consensus to pick leader? Well, that's all on the Nation newspaper this morning.
Okay, all right, so that's much for the Nation. Let's move on to the Daily Trust newspaper now. Daily Trust banner headline: Naira fuel crisis could hamper Nigerian elections, World Bank. For the riders, Kaduna, Zamfara, Kogi sue FG, CBN as court stops extension. 14 political parties threaten to boycott poll if. So you get to read on page 4 what is the condition. Buhari must act to douse tension. Who is saying that? get to read more on page 4 of the newspaper. So the World Bank is sounding the alarm here, saying if we do not manage these just 17 days to the election, we're looking up just over 2 weeks to the election, and there seems to be no end in sight. There are petrol in many filling stations, but it's very expensive. Coming to work this morning, the NNPC filling station at the Lameko roundabout, you know, you see long queues there, you know, and in other places you're buying for 380, 350, in some parts of the country 400, 500, 600. Yes. This is ridiculous, and so the World Bank is raising the alarm, saying
if it continues this way, it might hamper the elections.
But you know, I've also heard some conspiracy theories, you know, saying perhaps what those who are behind these, if that is the truth, if there are those behind these at all anyway, is that they actually want to trigger some reactions and actually get the election postponed. You know, I mean, so those are conspiracy theories saying a lot of things. Say, okay, so if this persists, and then of course you expect the Nigerians to come to the streets, protest, the disruption of things, lead to anarchy, chaos, and these will lead to a postponement of the election, or you know, whatever.
And we wonder what I stand to gain with that. And if there's chaos in the country, there's, you know, civil unrest, that's not good for
you know, you only get to know the start of a war. You don't get to know the end.
Yes.
It's better not to ignite a fire you can't control.
It might really blow out of, you won't be able to control it at all.
And it could as well consume you. Yeah. So if you're starting a fire, it might as well consume you if you're not careful. Yeah, so we do hope that we're able to manage these as soon as possible. Daily Trust also has the pictures of the Syrian and Turkish earthquake. Very, very disturbing pictures there. And Daily Trust puts the death toll at 3,000. The nation is about 3,005. Perhaps they went to bed later than Daily Trust. So the Daily Trust has 3,000, the Punch has 2,700. Yeah,
so whatever the case, 27, 3,000, 3,500, you know, it's not good at all.
It's bad. It's bad. So what we can pray for them now is for comfort, for consolation, and also hope that the international community will rise to the occasion to support them with relief materials and help them to get back on their feet as soon as possible. Very, very disturbing pictures.
Very disturbing.
Just under that, NAF aircraft loses tire, makes emergency landing in Lagos. I understand that aircraft landed on its belly because the aircraft lost its tires. I wonder, I don't know how an aircraft to lose its tire. Was it not
properly maintained or checked?
Was it not fastened to you properly? Well, thank God there are no casualties, no fatalities.
That's a good one.
Thankfully. EFCC arrests Abuja bank manager for holding 29 million naira new notes. Okay. Buhari wants killers of 16 Nigerians in Burkina Faso punished. Okay. And Yobe North, Supreme Court affirms Lawan as APC candidate. Many people cannot wrap their heads around that decision. Our lawyers will be explaining to us on the program this morning. IDPs is stranded as fire raises 200 houses in Boronu camp.
That's motives of war. I mean, they're already, you know, displaced as it is. And now they're displaced again.
And 3 soldiers wounded, 6 villagers killed in the Benue attack.
Yes,
that's another
attack. Keeps, you know, compounding, you know, per time. They keep attacking Benue. 3 soldiers again wounded, and then we keep losing, you know, human resource in battles. If these 3 soldiers that have been wounded now, we only hope that they come out of this, you know, alive. And the 6 villagers that were also killed. But it also means that there were soldiers on ground to also face that attack, and that probably that's why they're wounded. And we have just, you know, this number of people that were killed.
All right, so that's the March of the Daily Trust newspaper, you know, on Morning Spring this morning.
All right, moving on quickly to The Guardian. Naira swap, the headline. Court restrains Buhari, CBN on February 10 deadline. The writers say 3 APC governors sue FG over Naira scarcity. Obaseki backs cashless policy. Protesters accuse banks of hoarding, selling Naira notes to politicians for vote buying. 4 political parties threaten to boycott elections if Naira redesign. Cash withdrawal policies are cancelled. Nasima, CBN should have introduced 5,000 Naira notes, not redesigned Naira.
Another
Wow.
angle. That's a whole new angle to this whole conversation.
Yes, yes, and it's quite funny. Do you think we should have 5,000 Naira note as it is? As opposed to the highest denomination being 1,000 Naira.
And I can imagine what that would do to inflation. You know, so I mean,
Yes.
for every new introduction of every higher note, we've abandoned the lower denominations. And so if you introduce 5,000, then you might as well say buy 200 Naira in circulation as well. I mean, so what do you buy with 20 Naira and 50 Naira nowadays?
Yeah.
Have you seen 5 Naira and 10 Naira of late? What use is 5 Naira or 10 Naira in the Nigerian market, in the Nigerian, you know? So I mean, that's my layman understanding of it, but I don't know if it makes sense to introduce 5,000 Naira.
Can make
really.
some good justification to this.
But you know, when issues like this happen, you get all manner of interventions, explanations, theories, and everybody's saying it. So,
Yes, just like we have people on different sides of the divide now.
Yes.
But political parties are threatening to boycott the elections if Naira redesign. if it's extended or something, you know.
I mean, so I don't understand. So if the misery of the Nigerian people over these policies persist, are these 14 political parties saying they would rather have Nigerians continue to suffer? I mean, is that what they're saying? Because I seem not to understand.
You see, we're in sort of a dilemma now, because the CBN, I think, is at the root of this. From the get-go, they didn't get the implementation right. The policy might be good, but the implementation was wrong. You know, I think that probably from December it should have, the Naira should have been introduced way before the time it was introduced, and so that it can, be a bit far away from the elections. Because right now we're having people saying that if this extension is done now, it would probably jeopardize what the CBN actually redesigned the Naira for. But then
what
also
was
some
that?
people,
So can you help me?
have also been saying.
What did the CBN redesign the Naira for, actually?
They said the economy, to boost the economy, and some people have been saying that it was to, stop the vote buying thing and all. But now these people are saying that if this is extended at this point, well, probably the vote buying thing might not be curbed at this stage.
And so what I do not understand is how fighting vote buying becomes a responsibility of the CBN.
I don't think it's exactly a responsibility of the CBN. Well, in my opinion, though, I don't think it's exactly the responsibility of the CBN, but those who have that on their plates maybe might have sought the help of the CBN.
Okay. So, I mean, let's see. I believe that is the NFI, there's the EFCC, there's the ICPC. All of these agencies of government are capable, of fighting vote buying. So if they require the help of the CBN, perhaps they will signal to the CBN. But these needless suffering of Nigerians because of, a not properly thought out policy is what has brought us here. Okay, so that's it about the Naira swap again. We won't leave here if we continue to talk about the Naira swap crisis.
All right, we can still see the people at, ATM booths, who are trying to get the Naira notes, and they all look worried as they are. They're not even sure if they will get it, because they're really not on queues now. They're just still waiting around to see when that would start. And there's another picture of the evacuation thing, and that's the over 3,000 people that are dead at the site of the earthquake in Turkey and Syria. All right, just below that, Lawan in, Machina out. Supreme Court's decision splits lawyers. Okay, I think this is a period where people are splitting on issues. We have some people saying that if there's an extension, they will pull out of the elections. We have some asking for the extension. And just here too, on the Supreme Court's decision, we have lawyers splitting as well. All right, more of that story is on page 6. Mbaka spits fire over Kano. Naira redesign for scarcity. More of that news as well is on page 7 of The Guardian. Just above the headline and below the nameplates, pastors wail. Paul Adefarasin loses mother
That's a Pastor Wale.
98.
It's a Pastor Wale.
Pastor Wale, please. Pastor Wale, sorry. Pastors Wale, Paul Adefarasin lose mother at 98. I think, okay, they're siblings then. And they've lost their mother at 98. That's a ripe old age.
Yeah.
Pastors Wale then. All right, just beside that, on page 3, again, court commits EFCC boss Bauer to prison for contempt. Okay.
So I actually like to see the police act on this. You know, why can't just we see? I mean, if breaching the court, I mean, disregarding the court, so let him be committed to prison. But who will commit the EFCC chairman to prison? Who will act on this? Okay. Well, because of our time, we will just run through the other parts, so that we can bring in our guests,
NIPC moves to improve FDIs, reduce Nigeria's appetite for loans. That's on page 15. And the last one, Katsina attack. Death toll may exceed 100 as government urges residents to confront terrorists.
Okay, well, so that way we end the papers this morning. We'll take a short break. Now when we return, we'll be bringing you our guest. All right, thank you so much for staying with us. It's on to Morning Spring, and it's coming to you from Western Spring Television, reaching you live from Star Times Channel 190 on their DTT platform. We have joining us live via Zoom this morning from the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, Prince Ademola Oyedokun. He's a legal practitioner and is based in the Federal Capital Territory. Thank you so much for joining us on Morning Spring this morning, Prince Ademola Oyedokun.
It's my pleasure to be on the Morning Spring of the Western Spring Television.
Thank you.
Good morning, Nigerians.
Thank you. Well, so let's start with that shocking judgment yesterday. It came to many people as a surprise. Their lordships at the Supreme Court, in a majority judgment, affirmed Ahmed Lawan, the Senate President, as the candidate for the APC for the Yobe North Senatorial District. He never participated in that primaries. It was Machina who won. How does that judgment come to you?
Honestly, as an experienced legal practitioner, I am not surprised. I know a lot of Nigerians will be surprised because there are two well-recognized types of judgment, legal judgment, 2 types, and there is a third one. The 2 legal types of judgment that we have is what we call substantial judgment, substantial justice, and legal or technical justice. When we say substantial justice, most of the time substantial justice always amounts to injustice. But that is what is popular among the citizens. That is the type of this judgment that citizens applaud. On the other hand, legal or technical justice is that type of justice that follows the law, no matter whose horse is God. In attaining justice, when you approach a court, there are procedures, there are legal and technical procedures that your lawyer follows, irrespective of the fact of your case, your honesty, the strength of your case. If for any reason you miss any procedural or legal requirements, yes, in the court of public opinion, you are the person on the right side of justice. You are the person who deserves the favor from the judiciary. But in the course of pursuing your rights, maybe there are one thing or the other that ought to be done that you have not done in approaching the court. You forfeit that right because you have not come properly before the court. No matter how painful it may be your land that is going off, it may be your political victory, it may be your investment, you lose the case. And you may not have the right to go back to the court. Is that justice? Yes, technically speaking, legally speaking, that is justice, right? Then when the wrong person on the wrong side of the facts and law has his way without getting punished because of your procedural missteps or wrong steps, omissions or commission, the person appears to be victorious. And the public will not understand the workings of the court, right? They will say, oh, probably the judges have taken money. How could somebody who was supposed to be wrong adjust to be right? How could somebody who was supposed to win the land lose the land? Maybe there are one or two things that are supposed to be done in the process of pursuing your right that you have not done. Take, for example, now, in this Lawan's case, there are three major legal issues that are involved. There are cases where you have conflicting decisions of court as to the state of law in respect of a particular point. But on the issue of the supremacy of the party and the right of party to manage its internal affairs and to the nomination of candidates, the Supreme Court has always been consistent on that. The party has the final say. That is on the one side. Secondly, the crux of the issue between Machida and Lawan is the procedure followed in pursuing this case. In the party's direction for the Federal High Court in undertaking re-election matters, pre-election matters must be commenced by originating summons. Originating summons, which is a proceeding that is governed by affidavit evidence. You don't call witnesses, you depose to your facts. The other party deposed to his facts in an affidavit. And the court will look at the two affidavits and the legal submission of counsel and make a decision. Now, another law now says, now this is a pre-election matter that must be commenced by originating summons. So the lawyer who commenced the matter by originating summons had done very well. He had followed the procedure. But the allegations that are made in the affidavit relates to allegation of fraud. Fraud is criminal in nature, isn't it? Now, fraud being criminal in nature, there is another Supreme Court decision that is unanimous. It's not conflicting. They are consistent about it. You cannot prove criminal allegation against any person in an affidavit. There must be a witness that will be called to the court. When the witness comes to the court, the person can be questioned, examined, and cross-examined. Then it will be established beyond reasonable doubt that you have proved the allegation of fraud. Now you have a rule that says you must go to court for a pre-election matter by originating summons. Then you have another rule that says you cannot prove crime or fraud by affidavit evidence. And you are alleging fraud, and you cannot prove it in originating summons with which you want to commence a pre-election matter. How do you do it? The law also says when there is a conflict in affidavits that cannot be resolved through documentary evidence, you should call witnesses. So if you have started with originating summons and the issue of fraud or allegation of crime arises, you make an application to court. My lord, this point I want to prove to win my case. Allow me to call witnesses. I don't think any court will refuse that. That was not done in this case. So the issue that has been submitted to Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court is not even whether he participated or he didn't participate. All these things may feature. But the spinal cord of that case and the reason advanced by the Supreme Court for their decision for the case of the Machida to fail is that all the allegation he made against the other party is an allegation of crime, fraud to be precise, which cannot be proved through affidavit evidence. So the case must fail, no matter how painful it may be to us as citizens. So when I say there are two types of justices, one, legal justice, substantial justice, and then technical or legal justice. Substantial justice that I say may most of the time result into injustice is that when all of us have agreed that these are the procedures to be followed when we go to court to do these things, and this is the owner of the land, His lawyer has not followed that procedure. He has gone to court, and we have spent years pursuing this case. And the other person who is not the owner of the land comes up and says this case is incompetent. Take, for example, he ought to have commenced this case within 6 years. He's commencing it maybe 1 day after 6 years. That is the law. Yes, he's the owner of the land. My lord, his case must be dismissed. And when that case is dismissed, the entire community who knows this is the owner of the land, they will blame the judiciary. They may say they have collected money. Meanwhile, what they have done is called legal justice. So attempt to do substantial justice. If I were to be a judge today, I'll be very, very technical. I'll be very, very legal.
Well, so
some judges will say, let us do substantial justice. Doing substantial justice means bending the law in favor of one. So as citizens, we must, which one do we prefer? Legal justice or substantial justice? The third one that I said exists is the justice in the mind of public. They don't know all these technicalities. They don't know all these procedures. They just want to know that the person they believe should win, wins. But that is not professional. That is the same justice that gives right to, that goes to jungle justice. But when we are talking about professionalism, brilliance, strict adherence to the rule of law, it is legal justice that should always prevail, as it is in this case. The court of public opinion may not like it, but I think the Supreme Court has done justice. The principle that are set down now, or that was reinstated in this case, will be followed in subsequent cases. If you are going to court in a pre-election matter and you have a criminal allegation in your pleadings, make sure you make an application to call oral evidence to prove allegation of crime, which cannot be proved by affidavit evidence under originating summons.
All right. So, I mean, Prince Oyedeokun, so let me come in here. I mean, so many people are still confused. You've explained to us, but like you rightly noted, the third leg is for those of us who are not learned, as you say, you know, in the legal profession, who are confused. So they're saying, worst case scenario, why did the Supreme Court not actually ask that primaries be done again? How come someone who never participated in the primaries was now given the ticket, as against Machina, who participated in the primaries? What's the rationale behind? What's the justification in the Supreme Court?
As a practitioner, I had a cause to take up the case of a candidate who was obviously rigged out of primaries. And the name of the person who did not actually win was forwarded to INEC. In the course of my research, I tried hard to see any decision, notwithstanding I might not agree with it, but the Supreme Court has always been consistent that the right of choosing a candidate is strictly internal affairs of a party. They don't question it. They don't question it. I went to argue, to play the devil's advocate against myself. Okay, they have this right, but the party has a constitution. What if the party has not followed its own constitution? Can't this panel of wise men called justices of Court of Record, Federal High Court, Court of Appeal, Supreme Court, no such authority exists? If any lawyer has such authority, which says the party has no last say in the choice of its candidate, the lawyer should come out with such authority.
Okay, so you are saying that even if primaries are held, the party decision ultimately, whoever the party submits or are named to INEC, is the candidate. It's discretionary
of the party. It's discretionary. This is a wild statement that I don't like myself, but that is how it is. That is how it is. Then you go to court, ask people. You go to court, you will hear you have not exhausted internal mechanism of the party before you come to court to come and ventilate your anger against rigging in the primaries. And you have 14 days between the date of primaries and within which you go to court. When do you go to party for internal remedy? When? When the primaries goes the wrong way, somebody is rigged out, and you have 14 days from that day to go to court. and the party is not setting up the internal mechanism until maybe after 10 days. You write a letter, nobody acknowledges. So this strictly party affairs. Are we just enjoying our political parties as vital institutions in our democratic development to allow internal democracy? To allow internal democracy, they should allow the wills of the majority of their members to prevail in the choice of candidates. That's my general advice.
All right, Prince, I would just like to be clear on this. Are there no consequences to such inconsistencies within parties? I mean, when they conduct a primary and you just, you know, boycott that and forward another name to INEC, are there no legal consequences to that?
There are, because to me, it's non-compliance. It is not compliance with the Electoral Act. If you read the Electoral Act, it states specific, stage by stage, nomination, how consensus should be done, how party convention should be held, the ratification of candidates, all this. But ultimately, when party breaches these provisions, you as a party member, what you think you should do is to quickly approach court. And when you go to court, there are judicial authorities that will say the party constitution has its own internal remedy. You have not exhausted the internal remedies of the party before you come to court. Then your case is thrown out. It's frustrating. We are in the field. These politicians come to us for remedy. You go to court, then your case is thrown out for not having exhausted the internal remedy of the party as a condition precedent before you approach court. And the party will have put every stumbling block on your way to ensure that you don't have that internal remedy. These are areas where our electoral process needs reform. There should be legislative acts, operative provisions in the law that allows parties aggrieved to have direct access to court. If any amendment will be suggested to our electoral act, that area is very, very vital. It's really very, very vital.
Well, so, I mean, do you see any link between these and the earlier case with Godswill Akpabio? Many people never saw that coming also. I mean, so when this case of Lawan came up yesterday, many people, you know, castigated the Supreme Court justices. I saw one article that was excoriating the Lord Justices, you know, saying this is evidently injustice and this is perhaps, you know,
I myself have read some unprintable commentaries against the Supreme Court, and unfortunately, some of these things are coming from learned people too, who are expressing their displeasure. Well, as I said, legal justice, moral justice, or technical legal justice, substantial or moral justice, and then justice in the court of public opinion. Supreme Court, or any court for that matter, they don't care what the public says. Because don't forget, we say law is amoral. Law does not concern itself with morality. Law does not concern itself with our individual prejudices. Law does not concern itself with our religious beliefs. Law does not concern itself with our tribal culture. That if we make this pronouncement, this culture will be shocked. This morality will be shocked. This tribe will be shocked. No. They should do things according to the law. And then once the law is pronounced, everybody will fall into places. Even if we criticize this, you know, they can never be wrong. They are very right. They are very correct. Because they are supreme. Nobody can question them. And that is why they are infallible. They cannot fail. What they have done is justice as far as Nigeria is concerned. So any displayers now will be registered before God. So they are not supreme. They are final. Because they are infallible. But how do I put it? They are not infallible. They are not final because they are infallible. They can fail. But they are infallible because they are final. No other court. They have done the right thing. What do we do? There is this argument too, that the pronouncement of court to reflect the wishes of the people. This is not voting. This is not election. This is legal. This is deliberative legal reasoning. This is deliberative legal reasoning. So it's not the wishes of the majority. It's what they consider to be the raw law that they push out, no matter how dissatisfied we may be. And then we should be wary in castigating our institutions, our judiciary. Because most of the time, when decisions are given that are not in accordance with the public expectation, the next thing is to cast aspersions, make wide allegations of bribery and corruption against justices. It's unfair. It's unfair to these people. They are human. They may make mistakes. It may be genuine. It may not. Who cares? But they are final.
All right. So just before we let you go, we should ask about the court case instituted by 3 states up north, Kaduna, Kogi, and Zamfara, against the federal government over the Naira redesign policy of the CBN. That issue of the Naira redesign has generated lots of tension, descended to riots and chaos in many parts of the country. So this case at the Supreme Court, tell us how it works. You know, does the state have the local standing, as you lawyers call it, to sue the federal government over this decision? The CBN is an agency of the federal government. Does the states have the powers to sue? And what do you see or you think will be the outcome of this suit?
The Supreme Court, you know, is court of it's an appellate court. That is, when decision comes from the lower court, high court, court of appeal, you appeal to Supreme Court. It's an appellate court. It's usually not an original court. There is a particular order from Federal High Court already in respect of this Naira design. I'm trying to send you, if you see my finger, I'm trying to send you a copy of that judgment. It just came to me. By 5 political parties who instituted this case against the Central Bank and some other parties.
You know, but this particular case, yes, I mean, this particular case is by the state. I think it's separate from that one at the Federal High Court.
Yes, I'm responding from the point of view of the fact that there is a particular order of court. Okay. Federal High Court restraining the Central Bank governor and the Central Bank as an institution. Yes. From extending the time beyond 10 days, and from beyond 10th of February, and also restraining them from acceptance of old currency of 200 naira, 500 naira, and 1,000 naira. No matter how incorrect or correct that might be, that's a subsisting order of the court. Then before I talk on that order that is existing now, ex parte order, then the Supreme Court as an appellate court, as I said, has original jurisdiction. If there is a conflict between a state and federal government, you don't take that state, in that case, to a federal high court or court of appeal. You go straight, the state who has a dispute to resolve with the federal government, goes straight to Supreme Court. The case will not have to travel from High Court to a Court of Appeal to Supreme Court. It goes to Supreme Court straight. So the Zamfara, Kogi, and Kaduna State government, I suppose, that have gone to Supreme Court, they have done the right thing. That is the right way to go. The court has jurisdiction, and they have properly exercised their rights.
All right.
They have properly exercised their rights.
Okay.
And then there are 2 court cases now. The one instituted by political parties before the Federal High Court. One
okay.
Once it is taken by the, it will definitely affect. It will definitely affect the one before the Federal High Court.
All right. Okay. Well, I guess we'll leave it at that because of our time. But I would like to thank you most sincerely for joining us on Morning Spring this morning. Prince Ademola Oyedoku, a legal practitioner based in Abuja. Thank you for joining us on Morning Spring.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so very much, sir.
Thank you.
I'm grateful for the opportunity.
All right, so we'll take another break. When we return, we'll be bringing up our other guest. Stay with us. All right, thank you so much for staying with us. It's on to Morning Spring, and it's coming to you from Western Spring Television. We have our other guests joining us live via Zoom this morning. Still looking at developments in the judiciary. The judgment of the Supreme Court yesterday, it came as a shock to many people. The Supreme Court, in a split judgment of 3-2, affirming Senate President Ahmed Lawan as the candidate of the APC for Yobe North Senatorial District. You know, and that means Machina is out. We have joining us now. Dr. Misbah Lateef is a lecturer at the Faculty of Law, University of Hull in the United Kingdom. He's also a legal practitioner. Thank you so much for joining us on Morning Spring this morning, Dr. Lateef.
Good morning, Femi, and good morning, Nigerians. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you very much, sir. So, I mean, tell me, that judgment has been generating some controversies. Many people are shocked, especially coming after the Godswill Akpabio judgment earlier on. And these one again, I've seen some, you know, articles, some people coming hard on their law justices of the Supreme Court. But tell me, how does that judgment come to you? What do you make of it?
Femi, the judgment came to me also, you know, as a surprise. And I would say a very huge one. A very huge one because if you look at the ground upon which the Supreme Court returned or removed Mr. Machina rather, and then returned Mr. Lawan, it's very difficult for you to really agree with the rationale. And what happened yesterday, for me, in a manner of speech, is a return of the demon of technicality to the Supreme Court of Nigeria. And then the question you want to ask yourself is whether that demon of technicality has, you know, has promoted fairness and justice. And this is where the problem lies. I don't think the resort to technicality, as the majority judgment did yesterday, has served the cause of fairness and justice. And this is what should concern every patriotic Nigeria. You see, when the court said that Mr. Machina should have commenced his case at the Federal High Court, you know, by a writ of summons because of allegation of substitution of his name, which according to them was allegation of fraud or something like that. For me, that was quite, you know, rather technical. It does not really address the substance of the case. It has not addressed the question of whether APC did hold a primary on the 28th of May, where Mr. Machina, you know, emerged. It does not address whether there could be any other valid primary, you know, subsequent to that one attended by INEC on the 28th. You see, the Supreme Court of Nigeria is not just any ordinary court. That is the highest court in the land, where you can also, I mean, some people have called it the court of policy, and it is actually a court of policy, a court that should give, you know, directive or direction to the judicial course or system in the country. So for me, really, that judgment, and with due respect to their Lord Justices who gave the majority judgment, is just a technical judgment without fairness and without justice. And I want to commend the minority judgment of my Lord Justices, Emmanuel Agim and the other justice, I've forgotten his name now. I've also seen that minority judgment, at least I've read the snippet, and I can say that that minority judgment for me, you know, came across as a very sound and profound judgment, which addresses the issue of fairness and justice that I've spoken to earlier. That judgment, the minority judgment, which unfortunately is not the judgment of the court anyway, did address all of those issues. And they came to a conclusion that the Federal High Court was right when they decided that the only valid primary of the APC was that held on the 28th of May 2022, where Mr. Machina emerged, and that the subsequent primary, and I would dare say purported primary, that held on the 9th of June could not be valid without the earlier one being set aside or being reversed by the National Working Committee of the APC. So the court has not really gone into the issue of party autonomy or party supremacy, if you ask me. All they have said is that, yes, you can decide on who your candidate is, but you should do it within the parameters of the law. So for me, really, I don't want to call it an abracadabra, but it has come out of my mouth already, because that is exactly how I see it. And I think, as I said earlier, it is a cause for concern, and we should all be worried. We should all be worried. The Supreme Court should not be a court of technicality. And where the Supreme Court decide to follow technicality, as we saw in the case of Amechi, it should be done with a view to serving the cause of justice and fairness, which unfortunately I don't think an ordinary man on the streets, would agree has happened in this case. Nobody expected that Mr. Lawan would emerge. And you see, let us even examine the fact of the case. Mr. Lawan was playing a gamble, if you ask me. He wanted to be an APC presidential candidate nominee and a senatorial candidate at the same time, which is something that is even contrary to Section 150 of the Electoral Act. You cannot vie for two different positions in the same cycle of an election. So Mr. Ahmed Lawan, to address that challenge, as it were, went ahead, wrote a letter to INEC, and withdrew his candidacy or aspiration from the APC primary that held on the 28th of May. Then the APC presidential primary election held on the 7th of June, between 7th and 8th of June 2022. And Mr. Ahmed Lawan participated and he lost. Then 2 days after that primary, the same party, the APC, purportedly went ahead to conduct what I can now call a kangaroo and quite illegal, as the Court of Appeal and the High Court have found, primary, in a way to overreach the earlier one held, where Mr. Lawan voluntarily withdrew and where Mr. Lawan actually lost to Mr. Machina, who was validly elected. So these are the facts of the case. So on the face of the facts, and even on the face of the law, I don't think the majority judgment is actually, or has served the cause of fairness and justice. And this is why I think many people, have shown concern over this judgment.
Well, I mean, so what makes it more concerning for many people is the fact that, like you also stressed, Ahmed Lawan never participated in the original primaries. So there was a kangaroo primaries after he lost at the presidential, level. Is there a part of the Electoral Act? I've read some opinions since yesterday, and some have said, okay, so the Electoral Act empowers parties to nominate candidates, and that is whoever the party submits as his candidates that INEC must follow or will follow. Is that a true position of the law as regards the Electoral Act?
Femi, you are right that the only, at least as far as the Court of Appeal and the Federal High Courts, were concerned, the only valid primary of the APC was the primary held on 28th of May 2022, which INEC observed and participated in, which the Supreme Court unfortunately has now upturned, But regarding the party autonomy, I spoke to that earlier, or the powers of the party to determine their candidates. Section 84 of the Electoral Act generally provides for that. But what that section says, it does not really create an arbitrary situation where the party can decide to do whatever they like. Section 84 provides that a party can choose to nominate their candidate by direct or indirect primary. And whichever path they decide to take, the law set parameters for them. And if you check Section 84 sub 5, it set parameters for this. One, notice must be issued, congresses must be held at the particular senatorial districts. So this was exactly what happened in the earlier primary head. So it is not really the case that parties can decide, by whims and their caprices, to just throw up candidates without compliance with due process of law. So the law still requires them as they determine this internally, to comply with certain procedure or parameters which the law have set. And which in this case, I don't think the APC has complied with. Just for emphasis, 2 days after Mr. Lawal lost the APC presidential primary, then the party purportedly conducted another primary. What length of notice was given to conduct that primary? And INEC was not there, as the Court of Appeal and the Federal Court have also affirmed. And more particularly, Mr. Ahmed Lawan himself literally wrote a letter which the Federal High Court confirmed. It was part of the process before the Federal High Court, where he withdrew from the primary. Now, the implication of that was that Mr. Ahmed Lawan affirmed or acknowledged that the only valid primary of the APC was the one held on the 28th of May, and that was why he had to withdraw from it officially before he could participate in the APC presidential primary that held on the 7th and 8th of June. So the question is that at what point did Mr. Lawan resign his letter of withdrawal? At what point did the APC give a notice for a new Congress, to elect, another aspirant? At any rate, if the party has the autonomy or the power to do as and undo, as some people would like to insist, the question is that why didn't the party, I would say, cancel the earlier primary before going ahead to conduct another one? So what the Federal High Court and the Court of Appeal actually saw was that, let us assume for a moment that there was a second primary on the 9th of June. Then what happened to the earlier one, which INEC actually witnessed and participated in? You cannot have the two primary at the same time. The court would definitely have to settle for one. And I think they settled for the most credible one, which aired on the 28th of May, 2022. So for me, really, it is not a case of party doing and undoing. They do not have such powers. The powers also are to be exercised, with certain due process or parameters which the law has set under the Electoral Act.
All right, Doctor, could we move away from that elections now? Let's look at the judgment and the case of fraudulent activities that was also levied against the appellant now. What do you think? I mean, what do you say to that? Probably that was what the technicality that was against him in that judgment.
Okay, the question is, what was the fraud in this case? Mr. Machina actually claimed that he was substituted, that his name was, I would say, fraudulently withdrawn when the APC went ahead to submit the name of Mr. Lawan to INEC. So he merely claimed that his name was wrongly substituted, which the Electoral Act permits. The question is that even if that is a fraud, okay, yes, and I want to admit to that, it is a fraud that can actually be established with documentary evidence. So what the Supreme Court said was that when he started his case at the Federal High Court, he ought to have commenced the case by what we call a written a writ of summons. That is a process of court whereby you literally bring witnesses to court because you have disputes and parties call their witnesses, to speak to to those disputes. So they said that was a procedure he should have taken. But in his own case, he actually took a procedure which we call an originating process, whereby you simply approach the court, you ask them to interpret the law, and you present documents to them, by which they can do the interpretation. At any rate, the practice direction at the Federal High Court actually permits a party to commence a pre-election matter, by way of an originating process. So for me, really, this is a case where documents should have been enough to prove whether there was a substitution or a wrong substitution or not. So going into the detail of forgery or criminality, for me, does not really address the substance of this case. And it is unfortunate, in my respective opinion, that the Supreme Court actually took that view, which was actually pushed at the Federal High Court and the Court of Appeal, and which was rejected by those courts. So I don't really think this issue of fraud or forgery, is strong enough to dismiss the substance or the justice or fairness of this case. So I don't think that technicality should have been followed. At any rate, like I said earlier, the Supreme Court of Nigeria is a court of policy. It is a court of justice. What they should have done in that case, supposing the procedure was even wrong, and the Supreme Court has that power, is to say we want to overlook this procedural error. We want to look into the substance of this case because we are a court of justice. We are a court of fairness. You see, this judgment that come out of the court, they have a way of resonating with members of the public. And the judiciary, as we say, is a common, or the last hope of the common man. So when people lose hope in their judicial system, as we now seem to be, heading towards, unfortunately, then there is a much more chaos ahead, which no country want to actually wish for.
Well, so, just before we let you go, Doctor, so what's the implication? The Supreme Court is a court of policy. Whatever it said there, it's law. So what implication does this have on our political and electoral process going forward? Does this mean that any time from now, parties can wake up and decide to substitute rightful candidates, those who won primaries? Do we stand a risk of that? What's the implication of this on the polity going forward, sir?
Well, to start with, I think the first implication to note is that that judgment of the Supreme Court is a judgment of the court, and unfortunately, that has brought finality to the case. Mr. Ahmed Lawan, as it is now, is a candidate of the APC. Now, going forward, I think the judgment, with due respect, as in a way, set us back in some regard, because it has now in a way also created doubt in our system. The kind of inconsistency that we have seen in the recent time, from the judgment, particularly emanating from the Supreme Court of Nigeria. So as it is now, it has muddled the waters. It has muddled the waters in the sense that this technicality or the issue of fraud is not something that has really been, I would say, discussed with so much profundity that you could say this is actually something that will, there are no compelling reasons to really agree with this judgment, and that is a problem. So that creates doubts, and it doesn't really speak well for the system and our going forward. That is my fear.
All right. So we'd like to thank you, sir. We'd like to appreciate you. Maybe you hopefully be able to explain to us also more in detail to our radio listeners that have a better understanding of these issues. Lots, even those who are not learned, are confused and worried about the turn of events. But I would like to thank you most sincerely for joining us on the program this morning.
All right, have a good morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir.
All right, so that's the conversation here today. We'll be stepping aside for Emmanuel to come and give us what's trending. Maybe this judgment also part of what is trending on Emmanuel's plate today.
That should be.
Yeah, okay, but that's the show. Femi Olanipeku is my name.
I am Temitope Ajijalaoluola. Good morning.